me in the studio to look at this topic of electorate expectations and manifestos. From far left, we have Dr. Francis Boateng Ejenim. He's the Dean, Graduate School, Ghana Technology University College. In the middle, we have Mr. Jalel Odum. He's Executive Director, Inclusion Ghana. And on my immediate left, we have Mr. Edem Senano. He's the Executive Director, Africa 2000 Network. And African 2000 Network is a civil society organization. Welcome, gentlemen, to Agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Doug, we'll start with you. Ghanaians have a lot of aspirations, and politicians say they capture these in their manifestos. Are manifestos a good reflection of the needs and the aspirations of the electorate?
All right. Thank you very much for this opportunity. And if we talk about manifestos, I should bring it down to the understanding of everyone watching this TV, then it's more of promises to the layman that politicians will want to make, to tell them what they intend doing if they are given the mandate to govern the country. But most of the case in Ghana, we have had such promises for a very long time, and manifestos, if you consider what we have now compared to what manifestos have usually been, what manifestos politicians have given, then it means that there is a gap or a disparity between the two. So that makes me confidently draw the conclusion that some of the manifestos that politicians are giving us normally are not the ones they are able, they are unable to achieve. If you talk about the people of Ghana, I think it is in various groups. If you talk about the rural folk, what they are looking for may be very different from the city dweller or somebody who is just beginning life. If you talk about the farmer, he's looking for very basic things like having the road constructed. It could even be a feeder road. Having a sustained price for the produce that they produce. And that is going to be very different from a young person like maybe you, Debbie, who has just begun life and looking up to owning his or her house or having enough disposable income such that they have good food on the table and they are looking at conditions being created such that they can go on the housing ladder. And if you talk about, say, the teacher, he's looking for very, very basic things. If we are talking about, let me see, a businessman is looking for the right environment being created by politicians, having the right policies and regulations that he is able to win contracts and employ more people, pay them, and create a better society. If you talk about the working class, enough food for a student, he's looking for the opportunity of having a good job after school. Or his priority is the government or the politicians creating the enabling environment such that they can land the first job and climb on getting good life. So if you talk about what Ghanaians have been looking out for, sometimes they are not the very ones, the promises, the big promises that politicians do. They are looking for very, very basic things. Unfortunately, the politicians are promising what they cannot deliver. And if you look at the history, and if I go the memory line, Rawlings was promising probity and accountability. What happened at GMPC, we all saw it. Kufuor was promising an issue of, I think he was talking about fitters, turning them into garages and the rest. We saw it didn't happen. Atamels promised the cut down of prices of oil and the rest as soon as he gets power. It didn't happen. I don't want to talk about Mahama and the promises he has made. If you talk about Baumia, is making huge promises. Nanado is making promises. These promises don't materialize. Otherwise, Ghana will be a first-class country.
Mr. Odum, from the inclusive point of view, and as Doc said, there are people who are looking for very basic things. How come politicians who are looking for these votes are not capturing the issues and responding to these aspirations?
I would not say that they do not capture it completely, because obviously you do have a lot of civil societies, a lot of people, crying for certain basic needs, and these politicians hear them. And obviously, to get people excited about what you're bringing, to the table, you will want to capture something. And so, to some extent, I will say that they do capture some of these things in their manifesto. The reality of what happens after the voting is what we need to look into. But certainly, like Doc said, you could see that very basic needs. For instance, if I'm in my home, obviously, I'm looking at certain needs that I have. And a lot of times you're looking at government, that government creates that environment, if it is loan system, if the loan interest rate should be, better for me to go for loans to start maybe a small business. I may have the ideas, but if the environment that we have is not encouraging that, then obviously I think that's a problem. So I think in terms of the basic needs that people have, I don't think that you have all these captured, in the manifestos. Yes.
And day in, day out, the needs grow for some people. Some people are still living under the poverty line, even though the indicators say that we have done quite well in terms of having extreme poverty. But we still have people who are looking for the very basics: food, clothing, shelter. You think politicians are responding to this?
Well, it's difficult to say.
Because if you are jobless, then how do you find these basic things?
Absolutely. And sometimes I think that when we talk about manifestos, the challenge is that these are not operational documents. It's a list of things somebody says is going to do. Before that translates to change, it got to reflect in a sector policy. That policy has to have an action plan or an operational plan. Those plans can only be properly executed if they have performance management indicators. Somebody has got to be tracking it. If it does not finally reflect in fiscal policy for a budget to be aligned to it, it does not get done. Even if it reflects there at the operational level, depending on who's supervising, whether you get value for money, also be. So there are probably 5-6 levels of interrogation that have to be done for you to say that what a politician says will translate to change for the ordinary Ghanaian. And I think we should have moved far away from manifestos by now. Because the manifestos, it could be just guesswork. We don't know how the content ends up in
What
it.
would the politician present to the electorate for which the electorate will want to vote for them?
I'm expecting that we should have reached a point where it's institutionalized, where we say, let's say ISA does research. It's released January of the year of the election. All parties, we can measure you with what they are saying are the issues in the sector. We should be having a situation where, let's say, the technocrats in all the sectors meet with the committees that are writing up and say that, look, from our implementation of these policies in the past, these are the challenges on the ground. So the manifestos don't come up with things that really cannot work.
But we have an active civil society. Shouldn't we push this agenda and put the research out? CDD put one out recently in July, and there are a number of things and politicians are fighting against some. So civil society is doing some work. You think that is enough?
I don't think we are doing enough, regrettably. I think we could do much more. I think that the influences, the counterbalancing influences that we had in the past, say even the Students' Front, that could take up an issue and say, I think they have been weakened. Even with the CDD report, we do not find the amount of traction we would have expected. The politicians seem to say, oh, we don't believe this, we don't believe that.
This is a voice of the opposition.
Exactly. And it is a shame, because if you look at CDD's work over time, you will find that whether it was MPP or NDC, they have come up with very substantive issues that they felt should be addressed. So I don't think we are looking at the history of it, learning our lessons well, and ensuring that our people get value for all the talk that we have on platforms.
Doug, how do we push and strengthen our civil society such that when an issue comes up, the civil society can hold the issue and push it and make sure we drive it to a conclusion where politicians will listen and take the necessary measures?
All right. Civil societies are very good supporting, I would say, groups which help drive every economy or every country. We have one, before they even start, they already weakened because they don't have the information. And this is one of the key important things in the country, that we do not have access to key information. And also, what are they measuring against? Do we have any national policy that they are measuring each government against? I think NDPC is trying to do a 40-year, but is that what these manifestos are measuring themselves against? This is what I'm looking up to seeing in future. Unfortunately, the idea of manifestos going away is never going to happen because it is institutionalized and it is part of us. As I said initially, it is just a promise, and we all do promises. How can we do away with our promises? How can we do away promises? I promised my wife when I met her that I was going to marry her, isn't it?
Exactly.
If you are going to look for a job, you will promise the employers that I will be working very hard. So promises generally are part of us, and they are going to stay. And politicians' promises is the manifestos. Unfortunately, it's going to stay. But what actually makes it uncomfortable for me is the fact that when they promise, they know very well they won't be able to deliver, or is the case of being naive about the enormity of the problem. And that when they come to power, what they do is to compare themselves first with the previous administration, and two, they give excuses. This is what worries me. It's not about the promise itself. So the two major things that worry me is, one, we don't have any skill to measure this.
Is the promise the problem, or the fact that the electorate do not hold politicians accountable?
That is one of the key things. But the electorate also don't have any standard document with which to hold the politicians accountable. We don't have a national policy for which, if it is, say, road construction, we know that for every government we are expecting maybe 12% improvement under NDC, MPP, or PPP, or whatever came to power, and they weren't able to do 12%. Then we know that they have fallen short of the target for each government for 4 years. We don't have that. NDPC is trying to do that. And so now, if you go to the Western world, for example, it is a measure of how you have been able to improve on something which is a national policy. But here, the referee, the player is the referee. We have party policies. NDC came to power with their own policies, isn't it? So they are measuring themselves against their own policy. If I'm a footballer and at the same time a referee, what happens? I will score so many goals against my opponent. And that is why we are unable to get facts. And the civil societies also don't get the facts when it comes to what's the name of the civil society we were talking about?
CDD.
CDD. Yeah, sorry, I'm just a bloody engineer, so I don't know most of this. So, whether these civil societies don't have that information with which they can do critical analysis for the people of Ghana to know where the truth lies.
Zodum, that academia, dog is from academic institutions. These are the institutions where we can do extensive research. Do you think they are doing enough to support the system such that politicians will deliver on their promises, or will not overpromise, because then the facts are bare?
Maybe you should have asked me this question.
It's intentional. It's very intentional.
I will first talk about the civil society's work, then come to the academia. I think that it's important to appreciate what is there. And if you take, for instance, Imani Ghana, if you check, recently they interrogated the manifestos of previous, administrations, and basically they try to look, gauge what is there and what has happened. and you could see the tracking, what is really happening, and I mean people can really check out that for themselves and see whether they think that the government is doing, some good work. But generally, if you look at the kind of institutions that we have right now, you see that the accountability part is generally a problem. I mean, we try to, form or formulate a lot of policies, a lot of, laws and things like that. But where is the accountability part? Now, if you go into the academia where obviously a lot of their research is on the shelf. They're not useful. In fact, if you look at
they are not useful, or they are not selling them and pushing them and advocating. So
I would say that they are not selling it, because what generally the professor will be interested in is go and do some very good research out there. Let's see what is really happening. I don't know what really, the professors use the information for. Whether they sell it to government, I don't know what happens. But certainly from the academia point of view, and I'm not part of academia, I would say that they are not.
You say, thank God I am not part.
I'm not sure so much is being done, but perhaps it's also again issues of the structures that exist. Is it that the way academia works is only to document what is happening generally in our communities, and that's it? But what do we use that information for? Obviously, I do not think that we've made use of the academia very much, and so.
Doc, you want to talk a little bit about that briefly?
I think my fellow academics may be very disappointed with what I say, because I say it from the experiences I have gathered working in different countries, and I think the academia in Ghana is quite disappointing, including myself.
Why do you say so?
I think this is why. But the issues, let me go very, very fundamental. It's the output that is disappointing. I'm not calling the academics disappointed, but the outputs are quite disappointing, because one, how we choose lecturers or teachers in Ghana. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty of this, but I'm going to go just the tertiary. If you go down the bottom, possibly my ties will be deflated on my way, because I think that how we select teachers in Ghana is one of the fundamental issues why this country is not growing. One, at the tertiary level, how is a lecturer selected? One, he finishes school, he's the best in class. He becomes a teaching assistant most of the time. He gets a scholarship to go and do masters. He comes back, he's teaching. Very soon he has another scholarship by licking the boots of the head of department or the professor there, and then he becomes a lecturer. What has this guy got in his head when it comes to actually things that can contribute to society? He's not worked in the industry before. And this is my main problem.
But he's been a teaching assistant. He was the best in his class.
Yes, that is okay.
And he was
but
teaching
that is
his
different.
mates.
And that is why when the academic speaks, most of them are speaking at this level. And the people who really do the work are speaking at this level. So I personally believe that in DTUC, for example, one thing that we do best is partnerships, and we tend to bring people who are already in practice, and then give them a top-up of how teaching should be done at the tertiary level. No wonder DTUC is growing and it's now the best private university in the country. So I think this is where we need to go back to the drawing board and look at the fact that for a lecturer to deliver a whole course for a semester, if he has not had any practical experience in that area, related to that area, then we need a practitioner to do at least a 20 or 30% delivery.
And if we do that, academia is going to turn out research that will be meaningful to our
Don't
development.
go to research because I've got my own,
Shouldn't that be the role of academia, especially in making sure that politicians can focus on the issues that bother on the basic needs of people?
If you really do understand your work, you possibly might not end up being a politician as an academic. And over the years, because the fundamentally is a poor man's job and academics are not well paid, most of them will end up being politicians, isn't it? Because of that, it weakens their position to actually chastise the government for their wrongdoings. In most countries, academics will come together and drive policies. When was the last time you heard an academic coming up with a clear-cut policy that has been adopted by a political party in the country? No.
If civil society is not doing enough, and academia is not doing enough, and politicians are setting their own agenda, the question, he's a footballer, and he's also scoring himself, then isn't it a difficult situation we're in as a country?
I agree, but I want to take a step back and say that there is something. I mean, we have the CDDs, the IEAs, we have the Imanis churning out reports. The question in my mind is, how is that information being harnessed for the people of Ghana? We have the ESAs, who are writing socio-economic reports annually, state of the economy. So there's a sense in which we cannot say that there is not information that is useful for improving our lot. The question is whether we have platforms that allow the engagement.
Shouldn't we create them?
Absolutely. So that's,
why are we not creating it?
That's probably where I'm headed to that. In my mind, I'm thinking through it and telling myself, the formal engagement, because I can imagine that the researcher or lecturer being very conscious that, look, these politicians may not even mind me, they just brand me on one side of the divide and ruin my whole career, which is usually what they do. We'll say, look, I've done my research. If you are serious, you could pick it up and use it. And so the partisanship of our political climate is also affecting some of them in terms of, should I even bother to create a thing and say, this government, you've got to look at this, that, and then they label me XYZ. It may need a third group, like civil society, to create those platforms.
We already have one. We already have a civil society group.
No. I'm talking in terms of creating a platform to moderate that type of engagement and to make sure that kind of content that will help governance is provided. And also to get our politicians not to tend to always want to cover every form of information
How
that's
do we
provided.
do that?
Well, I think the people of Ghana, and this is where the RTI is so important, there's a sense in which all of us, because we don't have enough information, we do a lot of speculation. We are not sure of, even as we sit here and we talk about manifestos, we are not sure how the various parties develop these manifestos. How do they get the content? We are not sure of what happens in the next level. Does it get to public policy? What structures or systems we have in place? If I were going to talk about manifestos, I'd say, look, let's take a fiscal policy for the last 4 years and measure it with the money and see whether what they put the last time, how much of it ended up in fiscal policy and at what level. We are not doing any of that. So we are not in a position to give a good assessment of the level of achievement of these issues. And we need to move forward. In my mind, it is not about talking about the fact that the information is not enough. The little we have, let's begin to use that.
The Imanis, the CDDs, the ISAs are picking some of these things, and that's why they are doing this research. But how is that being churned back into what politicians say, such that they end up in concrete programs budgeted and implemented?
I think we should ask, I wish you had a politician here. It would be good to ask them that question. That, what have you done with the information provided by Imani, CDD, IEA? Are you taking these things seriously? Because they have nothing to lose by saying, look, this is the work we've done. It shows that we have a challenge in this sector. What are you doing about it? If it's about jobs, we think that, look, pay more attention to the informal sector. they are being crowded out with this kind of government borrowing. What are you doing about it? These are questions that legitimately I'm saying that we should go beyond the promises of a manifesto and begin to have well laid out things with indicators.
At what point?
At what point?
This time is the promise time. And then by December 7th, then the verdicts. And then we'll see.
We'll see whether they have indicators to these promises.
So at what time should they put indicators?
I think that if we're being constructive and progressive, we should redesign some of these. Maybe not even call them just manifesto. That may be the first level. But you need to move beyond that to give us some indicators of how we will measure this. Then we can take you seriously.
Doug, when they are making the promises, shouldn't they look at the environment, how much we are generating, what the prospects are, before they make these promises? You think they really consider, they do the economics of it and balance everything before they get numbers out?
Yes, let me go back slightly to talk about the kind of promises that politicians in Ghana do make, and whether or not they actually think through this.
Yeah. And look at the environment.
Let me pick just one small thing. Maybe I don't understand economics, but look at our budget. I bothered to pick the last 10 budgets. No, I can even going back to Rawlings' time and look at revenue against expenses. And I always found out that expenses were higher than revenue. This is something I couldn't understand. I know the economics will explain, because they are expecting some foreign donors and others to contribute to that gap. But it is something fundamental, because if you are talking about the economy, we are talking about individual homes, the aggregation of individual homes and businesses, isn't it? That is what will actually result in a country like Ghana. If I run my home consistently with the expenses being higher than the revenue, I might possibly end up in Sawam.
Or selling your house?
Or yes. So sometimes some of these things, I take them very, very basic and extend them as an aggregate. And I cannot understand why a country should always have expenses higher than revenue and expecting donors to fill the gap. So if it doesn't come, what happens? Loans. No wonder we are going just up.
Eurobonds.
Yes. So these are some of the things that politicians really possibly don't sit back and look at. I don't know if they look at and it is intentional. And if it is intentional, then I think it is a deceit rather than a manifesto or a promise. And this has always been the case for so many years, and it's just like cyclical, going around all the time. Or revenue is lower than expenses. Which year do we not increase our debt?
But we are developing lower middle income developing country, and if we really need to push, shouldn't we invest in infrastructure and all that?
That is
for which reason government keeps borrowing to make sure that they can.
I do appreciate
they can
that.
fill that infrastructure gap that they say exists.
I do appreciate that we need infrastructure, we need others, but for the little that we generate, if we are very realistic about our spending, could it not be that we could be doing better than just thinking big? Because politicians are always thinking very, very big in this country. And if you look at the needs that we listed here, they are very, very, very basic. But they are thinking big. Oh, I'm going to construct this. I'm going to make 200 schools. I'm going to one factory, one village, one factory. What are the others?
One dam.
One dam. I mean, you can go on and on and on. These are, I know, they may be achievable to some extent, but one village, one dam, technically, it's possible. But within the 4 years, is it achievable? No. What was the other one Mama said? I think they said something.
One house, one meter.
I don't know if that is an accurate reflection. Oh, one student.
I don't think that was a major problem. That was a minor one. He went to a particular area.
That is a minor problem. Let me thank you for classifying the major and minor. But what I mean is, we possibly as people are not looking for things. Politicians get rare. Let us see what you can do to improve my life, such that if I wake up in the morning, I've got food on the table for my wife and 4 kids. I have got a small, maybe Volvo car out there that I can drive to drop my kids in a good school where my kids feel quite safe. If the kids are sick, then I have opportunity of going to a hospital and being able to afford health care. These are really basic human needs. Don't tell me one village, one factory, when in the country nobody is questioning where you get the money.
It's actually one district.
One district.
One district, one factory.
One district, one factory. And then one village, one dam.
In a particular part of the country.
In a particular part of, okay, thanks. I think they are really very good. And I'm an engineer. Constructing a dam is quite easy. It's a very easy that we can use for irrigation. And I see that as one of the important things in the country. But don't make it big. Don't exaggerate it. Okay? If it is students, one student, one, what is it, laptop or whatever?
Tablet. Electronic book.
What happened to the RIG laptops or whatever that was distributed? You see, some of these things are not sustainable, are not credible enough, and we are not interrogating issues as a public, and we are allowing the politicians to say whatever they want and getting away with it.
Planning and dreaming big, making big promises and achieving some, isn't that better than not promising at all, or promising small and focusing small? Because if you promise big, then probably your scope is big and you might be able to achieve much more. Shouldn't that be positive?
Well, I think that it has become quite competitive. If you look at, different political parties trying to, put forth what they think are their dreams, their aspirations, or even taking on board the wishes of, the citizenry. Obviously, you would imagine that they will come with very competitive, manifestos, and that explains what we currently have. I think that they are just giving us what will cheer them up. I mean, the citizenry will say yay to it.
That's what is winning election.
Yes, of course, and I think that it's the voting population also are becoming intelligent by the day. They are beginning to see what is doable and what is not. And for me, today when I listened to the NDC manifesto, again, it was exciting for me to hear people first as one of their pillars, which they want to, they want to be achieving in the next 4 years. But the question is that doable? People first, it means that person with disability by the roadside should be able to leave the roadside and have something meaningful doing. That is people first. How many years have we gone through elections? How many years have you seen these people by the roadside? It is telling you that the manifesto is not a true reflection of what is exactly happening in our communities. And so coming from my sector, which is disability, you can tell a lot of people whose poverty are deepening. You're looking at people who are not first getting education, and the only reason why they're not getting education is because they are using a wheelchair and they cannot access the class. Obviously, such a person will not go to school, and that person will end up on the street because the inequalities are so wide. You tend to find out that there are so many people who are cut off, and that is why the SDGs, one of the strong wording is leaving no one behind. We are expecting that government, in as much as they are trying to give us their wish lists and tell us all the promises, we are pleading with them that they should be more serious. We should end the manifesto era and now get to business. Because look at, for instance, the disability movement. We have a law, that is the Act 715, which has, all the way 10 years back, 2006.
Standards Authority is now developing standards. After
for accessibility.
After the 10 years.
After 10 years. We are talking about making all public buildings accessible. Here we are today. The president is promising that, well, now that you can even see, that our manifesto is in Braille form for the visually impaired to be able to have access to it. When did this happen? Only this year? 10 years back ago?
But isn't that a positive?
It is positive, but how can you have a law and only materialize that one thing only after 10 years? We are joking.
Yeah.
I think we need to get more serious. And I think that there must be a way to, get the politicians more serious, to, give us manifestos that are real, that are achievable. And again, I think it then brings to the question, how can civil societies make, the accountability process more, possible? Because I think that there are people who are doing great work like the CDDs, the Imanis.
And they should be supported.
They should
Inclusive governance is something we talk about. We don't practicalize it. We have persons with disability. For instance, the presidential Flagstaff House is said not to be disability friendly. I even said it. Are we making the people first that the NDC promises, and then the inclusive governance that as a country we have signed up to? Are we really looking at that?
Well, I think there's a disconnect between what we find our politicians saying on platforms
and what we sign up to.
Us. Yeah. And these quality of life issues are part of the frustration that makes a lot of Ghanaians think that, are we really going or are we coming? We're talking about the electoral expectations of Ghanaians. And I, for myself, would have said that my expectation would be that when you pick a new manifesto for 2016, there should be first a very thorough discussion of what we promised the last time. So if we said 200 schools.
If you are the incumbent.
Yes, if you're the incumbent, for example, say 200 schools. You have 123 or whatever in varied forms of development and completion. Why didn't we finish the 200? What are the states of completion? What were the challenges we faced? Why couldn't we deliver on this? A very thorough analysis so that we know where we are. And when we are looking forward, we can tell that these are the things we've got to do to move ahead. I think there's a sense in which we are not being very scientific about the issues we face as Ghanaians, having thorough discussions. Let's put all the emotion aside and just face the facts that this is not working. This one is working. What are the steps we've got to take to make sure that the ones that are not working, we can see some progress on those issues? Inclusiveness is being captured. This is something that we started talking about for 5 years. It's become a key issue right from the NDPC level. It is part of our GSGDA growth and whatever, shared growth and development agenda. It comes down to all policies. We talk about it on political platforms. And yet, where the rubber hits the road and you want to see that it is happening, it's not happening. So I would like a situation where I don't have problems with my ECG card every now and then, and I have to write to ECG and I see about 60 people sitting there, everybody having it because it's a poor quality card. I don't want a situation where I go to the post office, I want to clear something, it's 4 o'clock, they tell me they've closed already, and there are lots of frustration, the quality of services. We don't hear discussions around the things that are frustrating Ghanaians. The price of living, the cost of living, it's so challenging.
The Ghanaian is a very tolerant person.
We are too tolerant. So everything is skyrocketing.
That's a good quality.
No, it's not too good, because we bottle up things, and at a certain point when things get out of hand, then you see a reaction that we could have dealt with if we were speaking about the issues and confronting them. So it's dangerous to wait till it's too late. There are lots of issues that are frustrating Ghanaians at the moment, and we are not hearing those in the manifestos. We are only hearing big issues, like my brother says.
Okay. In this manifesto, Doc, the needs of the vulnerable, because we all have needs, but there are a group of people who have special needs and are vulnerable, and so should be given particular attention. You think politicians are paying attention? Well, we've heard from Inclusion Ghana already.
I think no. It's only talk. And I will call it tuna. Talk only, no action. You find them in the various manifestos who will do this for the vulnerable, but they've been on the street for years. I'm not saying that by just a small decree or one decree, you have all of them disappearing from, but there hasn't been any sustained effort in trying to support the vulnerable. Go to our institutions. You will find out that if somebody uses a wheelchair, they hardly have access to our buildings. We've talked about this over and over. How much is it? It can be just a slope, what is it? A staircase that is sloped, a smooth one.
There are actually requirements, which is now under development.
Yes, but
they are now setting up
do you find them? Do you find them in our buildings? Get into the building, we have got huge things, but just a basic thing of a wheelchair user climbing to even the ground floor to use it, it is not there. So I think it is much of a talk than just doing it, and it has become tuna. As I said, talk only, no action. And if we are being serious, then we should begin to think about helping the vulnerable, especially people in the villages who cannot even afford a square meal a day. I mean, what are we doing to help them? People who cannot, who are using the wheelchair, you find them sleeping all over. You see people, mad people everywhere on the street of Accra, Kumasi, and every part of the country. So in your view? So in my view, I think it is only talk only, no action. And that we should begin to think and act for the vulnerable to have the equal opportunities that we have begun to preach.
I think it's the same issues. I also want to say that there has been some progress that have been made. That is not to say that all is lost, but I feel that there's a lot more that needs to be done. For instance, we currently have an inclusive education policy. Now my problem,
practicalizing that.
Yeah, that's the point. For us, I mean, it turns out that all the time you go to sit with government is happy to bring about a policy, but then how do we translate that into that tangible things? Programs. And so I feel that is where we lacking either capacity or we lacking the political will. I think that a lot of times some of the questions that people ask is that, well, if there's somebody using a wheelchair and I have a more able child, who will I support? The question is that you don't know how both of them are going to turn out. And you've got to invest in all of them until the end, because you have a responsibility towards both of them. You brought them together. And so I feel that government is not taking, for instance, the vulnerable groups seriously. It's not taking especially people with disabilities seriously. If it is now that we want to do, Braille books for, people with visual impairment, elections, in terms of elections, they're using the title jacket and things like that. It means that we could have done it. And so what is preventing us? I think we should just get serious and
These are positive developments, even though it's taking a long time, the Tata jackets, the bills, and the fact that that topic is getting into manifesto should make us excited.
Well, yes. I mean, we cannot say that some things are not happening. NHIA, health insurance, the school feeding. But all of these, for those that exist, require thorough review at the operational level. There are a lot of challenges and bottlenecks that we ought to have overcome by now and moved ahead. And we're expecting many more quality ideas and policies that target the vulnerable. The scope of even what is happening now, who is covered, and those who are not covered, are issues that we should be thinking about. I would like to see a situation where every election year we have a sector-by-sector analysis of what has been done by policy of implementation, and that informs. So even opposition parties can commission independent research institutions to tell us, looking at the state of the vulnerable in Ghana today, looking at the handicapped and so on and so forth, what is it that the policy has said, the law has said, where have we achieved things, where are the gains, what are the gaps that ought to be filled, so that we have a more scientific and strategic approach to moving ahead. This talk without any indicators, no real foundation, is not getting us, will not get us anywhere.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Doc, you want to give us some last words in a few minutes?
Politicians, stop the deceit, get real.
Stop the deceit, get real.
Let's include everybody, and we think that no one should be left behind.
No one should be left behind. And
Ghanaians should not be too excited about manifestos. Let's ask the hard questions about implementation, about fiscal policy, about what we intend to do, about where we have failed, so that we can move ahead.
So that we can move ahead. Thank you very much. My guests have been Dr. Francis Boateng Ejenim from the Ghana Technology University College. He is a Dean Graduate School. And we have Mr. Edem Senanu from Africa 2000 Network, Civil Society Organization, and Mr. Jalel Odum. He is Executive Director, Inclusion Ghana. Thank you very much for being part of this discussion. My name is Deborah Kwabla.